Chad, do you want to ask the next question?
Yes. David asks, what language did you speak? And how did you plan ahead to get out of Afghanistan? And how did you find a fixer to help you around?
I don't speak the local languages in Afghanistan, so I, in the first days of the fall, was relying on the goodwill of Samaritans I run into on the streets. And this is like me going on the streets every day. And like, I remember the fall, and during the fall, the first day of the fall on the 15th, my driver abandoned me. And I resorted to taking a taxi cab to navigate the city. And the taxi cab driver obviously spoke very little or no English. And I would jump out of the car and try to speak to random people on the street, and some of them would speak English. Actually, you'd be surprised sometimes because a lot of them have come across Americans or have worked with Americans, so they, you know, and was able to like rope them. It's like, can you help me talk to this person? And then we talked that way in the first couple of days, and then like, and it was chaos because all the fixers and all the translators were trying to get to safety, were trying to flee in the beginning days. So my first priority was finding a driver. Once I found a new driver, then I could work on finding a translator, and that was like very difficult in the beginning stages, and was really relying on other people a lot to help out.
All
Next
right.
question.
Yes, we have another question from Olivier, who asks, in the past 2 years alone, you've covered Afghanistan, Ukraine, COVID, all tense, at times violent situations. Are there stories that bring you joy, stories that you seek to disconnect from the violence you've seen?
Let me at least throw in a kind of this is something Marcus and I have talked about over the years. The fact is that when Marcus first came here and I asked him, what do you want to do? What kind of photographer do you want to be? And he said he wanted to be a conceptual photographer, which is like, okay, remember that? And I like, okay, yeah, I would like to do something like, like putting things together and all, kind of like studio photographer. And so he started getting assignments. He started covering protests, the San Bernardino mass murder and all this stuff. And he found his niche. He really loved covering that kind of stuff. So I've always joked that his joy is covering death and destruction, and so.
Oh God.
But that was a running joke we had. But Marcus found his niche that he really wanted to be. Why he wanted to be a photographer, he found it. He found it that he really wanted to cover that kind of type stories, right? That stories, and I think that drove him into why he became such a great photographer. I mean, he went through a lot of discomfort, things that other staffers would not do, because he found his thing. And it's something I always tell younger photographers: why do you want to be a photographer? Because there's long hours, you're carrying a lot of gear. And a lot of photographers can't really answer that, but go ahead, Marcus. Sorry.
I mean, I want to answer Olivia's question, which is, that's a very good question. Thank you. I think the stories, I mean, I feel like joy is a tough word to latch on to for me. I think what gives me joy is the meaning I get from covering the work that I do. I mean, Calvin, his jokes aside, is that, I mean, I've always found meaning in covering struggle, meaning in covering, trauma and grief. And I think a lot of it has to do from within. I think it's like recognizing what my background was and how I deal with pain, how I've dealt with with certain issues, like personal issues in my life. And I've always gravitated towards this stuff. And I feel like finding meaning or finding joy for me is kind of helping shine a light on other people's, in not suffering, but struggle in a way, and giving dignity to their struggle. But in terms of stories that I try to do, that try to disconnect, I think the stories that I feel like give me the most disconnect from all the conflict reporting that we do are the stories about, like, you know, about good Samaritans, like goodwill and heroism, I guess. When I meet people who are doing things and are selfless, like in Ukraine, like we follow these volunteers who were hot wiring like abandoned cars and just driving whatever cars they could find to drive people out of a besieged city. Those were stories that lifted me and gave me a temporary relief from the war, even though the war was very much raging around us and we were very much in the car with him while artillery was coming down left and right. But I felt like this is why we do this, you know, because this is why this is what gives me joy, is like shining, kind of working on those stories, because it kind of shows how good humanity can be.
Wow, that's pretty powerful. Chad, do we have more questions?
We have one more teed up right now from Amy, who asks a series of nuts and bolts detail questions here. Will you please share what a day might look like on these assignments? How do you communicate, workflow, charge camera batteries, upload from conflict zones? Where do you sleep and how do you communicate to stay safe? Can you please go through the process of shooting, staying somewhat anonymous, etc.?
Very good question.
Well, I'm going to keep this very vague, I guess, because but I think first Sandra and everybody else knows, who are editors here, know that like a first rule is we check in. We have a security check-in with our editors, right? We have a predetermined time we check in, like, and we check out, and we check in. It's like, hello, good morning, or good evening, wherever you are. I'm safe. This is what I'm going to do today. And these are all plans you have made the day before. You can't go out without a plan, basically. You got to know where you're going, point A, point B, and follow that plan. And if you find something else, then add it to tomorrow. Sometimes there's room for improvisation, but oftentimes it's not wise to improvise without letting your editor know, basically. So we try to stick to that rule for safety reasons alone. I mean, gear-wise, I keep my gear simple. I oftentimes carry one camera, one lens. I flew into Afghanistan with one camera, one lens, because at that point we were in between. We were strapped for gear, and I didn't have enough gear on me. So I've since kept my work style very simply, hiding my camera in a messenger bag that I carry around the world with me, basically. I call it my Jack Bauer bag, and in there is my all the things I need for the day, and that's it. And then when I'm not taking pictures, I put my camera bag in a bag and move on, and I look like a schoolboy going to school basically half the time.
Well, I think we are almost at time, unless anyone else has a question that they want to drop in the chat. But if not, Calvin, do you have any parting words or advice or thoughts that you could leave us with?
Well, again, I will reiterate that Marcus is a great example of what future photojournalists should strive for. Someone who can do it all and not just take photos. So I think Marcus is great in planning, talking about what he wants to do, and how to execute it. So whether it's video, social media, photography, writing, I think you got to do it all. You got to be the complete journalist, and Mark is a perfect example of that.
Yeah, I think I've learned in the last year or two of this job. I haven't done this job for very long. I've learned that there is that all these little things, even reporting or even doing audio recordings or little snippets for social, you are still reporting, and it all helps the photography because you glean a lot more context, doing all these little things, and it enriches the photography in a way. If you allow it to, it can enrich the photography in a way that is beautiful.
Well, Calvin and Marcus, thank you so much for your honesty, especially when it comes to sensitive subjects such as mental health. I think it's important that we all take care of ourselves as journalists. Thank you for your time, and I appreciate everyone in the audience, even though I can't see you, we can't see you. We appreciate the questions, and thank you very much. Have a great night.
Thank you.
Thanks.